What's up, everyone? It's me, Lone. I hope you're doing all right. Today, we need to talk about this latest Dragon's Dogma 2 situation. I genuinely believe that this game could be one of the most polarizing game releases of the year, if not the most polarizing release. If you go online, you will see so many bloody people that absolutely love this game to death and are praising it, and in the same breath, so many other people that are absolutely trashing on the game and hate a lot of aspects of it, right? It feels like there's no in between, and IGN did a pretty good write-up about this. I'll link it in the description below. But I wanted to make a video about this topic a couple of days ago because as I'm scrolling through the subreddit for Dragon's Dogma, as I usually do, trying to come up with video ideas and whatnot, I'm seeing that difference. I'm seeing such a huge contrast between people loving and hating the game. And we need to talk about it. Why is this happening? Why is Dragon's Dogma 2 reaching so many players? It hit over 200,000 concurrent players on Steam, doing very well for Capcom. But also as well, it's still sitting at mixed reviews on Steam, and on Metacritic, user reviews are at 6.2. So let's try and analyze it a little bit. You all know my opinions about the game. Even though I can fully admit there are downsides, there are criticisms to be had, I still love Dragon's Dogma 2, right? I love the visuals of it. I think it looks gorgeous. I love the exploration. I feel really immersed exploring in this game. I think the combat system is really fun, especially the vocations, and you can swap between them and experiment with them. I think the pawn system is pretty unique and cool. So overall, I really like Dragon's Dogma 2. And those are just some of the positives that first come to my mind, right? When playing the game. But I still want us to be able to talk about the criticisms and the downside because no game is perfect, right? And I really want this video to be an opportunity for all of you, for everyone, to just share your thoughts about the game. In the comments below, I would ask you, list your top 3 things that you love about Dragon's Dogma 2 or you like about the game, and then the top 3 things you don't like about it. So we can see everyone's perspective, so we can get it out in the open and then really understand why this game is just so polarizing in the community right now. But what I want to do now is talk about some of the biggest criticisms that I've seen people have with the game online, right? And as I alluded to, no game is perfect. I agree with a lot of these criticisms, though with some other ones, I will push back a little bit. And ultimately, I think this kind of discussion is pretty healthy to be having. So number one, by far the biggest criticism for Dragon's Dogma 2 is absolutely the performance. I don't think anyone can sit there and justifiably say that the performance of Dragon's Dogma 2 is good. Whether you're on PC or console, and especially if you're on Xbox Series S, the performance of this game absolutely needs to be improved by Capcom. And we talked about why this is occurring in large part. It's because of the engine. It's because it's so CPU bound, especially when it comes to NPCs. That's why often when you're walking into big towns and big cities, your frame rate will absolutely tank. Whereas when you're in open areas like exploring the countryside or whatever it might be, your frame rate might actually be really good and your game experience is pretty smooth, right? So that's what's happening, but it's not necessarily just the frame rate. If you watch Digital Foundry's latest video on Dragon's Dogma 2, they mentioned that even if you might have a relatively stable average frame rate, because the frame times in this game are so variable, that's why the game at times often does not feel smooth whatsoever, even if in those big towns your frame rate might be staying relatively stable. Because the frame times are going crazy, it just feels really rough and really not smooth whatsoever. So this absolutely needs to be fixed by Capcom, and I don't think anyone can dispute that. Now, to their credit, Capcom has come out to say they will be fixing this, and they're also going to try add some other features, especially for you on console, to help you out a little bit. You're going to be able to turn off ray tracing, you're going to be able to turn off motion blur, you're going to be able to cap the frame rate in your game. So instead of going, with a variable frame rate to 45 and then down to 25, it should stay hopefully capped at 30 FPS, with obviously some drops to 25 and maybe even down to 20, depending on the console that you're on. So some of those features will slightly help with the performance, but there needs to be a much bigger patch and fix that addresses NPC pathing, that addresses how reliant this game is on CPUs, and ultimately I think the biggest thing they need to do on PC, introduce DLSS 3.0. It's in the game files, they just need to turn it on, and also give us a feature where we can reduce how many NPCs are actually existing in these towns. If there's no other way of optimizing the NPC pathing and the way this engine works with CPUs, then just reduce the amount of NPCs in town, or at least give us the option to do so. Starfield does it, many other games do it. I think that's absolutely one of the quickest fixes, hopefully, that Capcom can be doing for the performance in this game. So that criticism, I absolutely agree with. The second one, we've talked about this previously, it is microtransactions. And this one is way more of a mixed bag, right? So it's microtransactions when it comes to port crystals and the Art of Metamorphosis tomes and the RC and stuff like that. Now, I will say, I think the issue was definitely a little bit overblown. Now, don't get me wrong, I still don't like in a single player game how there are so many microtransactions. Yes, to an extent, it doesn't necessarily sit right with me, but I've also always been the kind of gamer that doesn't care, for instance, if there's a bunch of cosmetic microtransactions. If you want to buy the cosmetics, great. If you don't, it doesn't really, worry me or worry my experience. But when it comes to the microtransactions in Dragon's Dogma 2, they start to blur the line a little bit because they, to some extent, and you might, disagree or discuss to what extent it does, but to some extent, it does impact gameplay directly. But the reason why I'll say it's overblown is because, yes, with these microtransactions, you can get these items in the game. Yes, with the ones that you can't get, for instance, the Explorer's Camping Kit, many people pointed out to me, which I was wrong about, that there are better camping kits in the game, which are lighter. So even though you can buy one that is, pretty light, there's one that you can get through the game that's even lighter than that. So what's the need of you being able to purchase it? The same goes with the Rift Crystals and other stuff as well. You can get them pretty easy in the game. And also as well, the purchases are limited. So if you remember what I said about how the Steam purchases were designated as A, B, C, and D, people told me that it's only because you can only purchase those purchases once, and that's it. Once you purchase A or B or C or D, you can't purchase it again. So you can't keep buying Rift Crystals over and over and over. You can't keep buying a lot of these microtransactions over and over and over. So they are limited in that way. So I agree the issue was overblown a little bit. I still think some people have legitimate grievances with the microtransactions, but when it comes to me personally, it hasn't affected my playthrough. I've never found the need to purchase more Rift Crystals. I've never found the need, now that I know there's a better camping kit, I've never found the need to buy that camping kit. So I don't think it's as bad, especially because you can get the Wake Stones that you need, you can get the Rift Crystals that you need, and especially when it comes to the Port Crystals, there's a lot of mischaracterization about how fast traveling works, right? The Port Crystals are markers that allow you to fast travel, but you cannot buy Fairy Stones, which is the only thing that actually allow you to use the Port Crystals in the first place. Those do not exist in microtransaction form. Those are limited in the game, whether it's by 10,000 gold at vendors or by simply exploring and picking them up. So if Fairy Stones were available as a real money microtransaction, I would be sitting here agreeing with you that that sucks, but it's not that. So even though there's an extent that I understand why people are upset about Port Crystals being available as a purchase, at least it's not Fairy Stones. That is absolutely the concern, and people that have mischaracterized the fast travel system, I think, really need to look at the game and understand how it works. I've been corrected many times when it's come to talking about these microtransactions, again, namely when it comes to the camping kit and how many of them you can buy. So I think that's really healthy to be doing. If you've said something wrong, admit it and move on, and I've done that in this video. So now let's talk about another one of the criticisms. It's absolutely the enemy variety. I agree this stuff gets very, very repetitive. As you're exploring this game, there are so many goblins, there are so many wolves, there are so many harpies, there are so many bandits, and so many saurians. At night, it's a little bit different, of course, with the skeletons and the phantoms. But during the day, when you're encouraged effectively to travel, you are seeing the same enemies over and over and over. And that issue is only amplified because of how many combat scenarios there are. You can't walk 10 meters down the road without being approached by another bunch of goblins, right? Or another bunch of wolves. It just keeps happening time and time again. And to me, I know they talked about a big thing about how they want traveling in this game to be fun, right? They don't want to have a normal fast travel system because they want you to enjoy the experience of walking and exploring and finding a cave and finding cool secrets and whatnot, right? Which I have been getting to an extent, mind you. It's one of my favorite bits about the game. But I agree that the enemy variety is lacking and it gets repetitive and it gets a little bit overwhelming at times. Now, the counter to that, I'm trying to cover both sides here. The counter to that is that you don't need to fight every enemy. You can just run away and tell your pawns to come with you. That's absolutely a viable way to be exploring, and many people could be doing that, though there are other enemies that can keep chasing you. So there's a lot to cover here, but I agree, enemy variety is lacking a little bit. I do like the big enemies though. I think fighting griffins and drakes and golems and all that is still fun. But overall, I do agree enemy variety in the game could be a little bit better, though it's personally not my biggest criticism with Dragon's Dogma 2, right? But now let's talk about the lack of fast travel. This is one that I have to disagree with in terms of people that have an issue with the fast travel system. they're doing something different. It's an intentional design choice. Don't get me wrong, I love my games like Skyrim and Fallout where I can fast travel and just go wherever I want, right? And of course, I have to discover the location first. And I love those games, especially when I have limited time to play. I don't want to spend the time absolutely walking everywhere because it affects what I believe to be, in a lot of those cases, you know, the real actual gameplay in the game. But when it comes to Dragon's Dogma 2, it's an intentional design choice. They haven't just taken away fast travel and said this game in every other way plays like every other game that has fast travel. No, that's not what they've done. They've implemented other ways for you to fast travel, which I think is a pretty cool, unique system. I like the ox carts. Yes, they're slow. Yes, they can be attacked in the middle of the night, or they can just be attacked in general. But that's fun. I like snoozing off in an ox cart, even though it's slow, and being attacked randomly, and being the big bodyguard and saying, I'm going to kill you all. That's a cool design choice for me, right? The only downside is that ox carts aren't available everywhere, and I wish they were available in more of the towns and more of the locations. I can't remember which town it is. Is it Melve or Harb, where there's only a port crystal and no ox cart? So unless you're running there all the time, there's no other way to get to that town unless you're spending a ferry stone on it. So I just wish there were more ox carts because I think the ox cart feature is actually pretty cool. So I don't see it's such a negative for there not being traditional fast travel. There is, but it's just more limited in the game. They want you to explore the game in other ways. And that's why I believe they put more of an emphasis on exploration, on the secrets that you could find, the statues you can find, the seeker stones, the dungeons and the caves. That's why I think the game works really well. And I actually think a fast travel system where you can just go everywhere would absolutely undermine it, right? Especially because when you are using ox carts and stuff, it doesn't open up the map for you. You're encouraged to bloody walk through the thing. So I think that's actually pretty cool, right? And again, I have seen outlets like IGN, even though I like the article that they wrote, they absolutely mischaracterize how port crystals and fairy stones are used. So that's what I'll say about the fast travel system in the game. I actually don't mind it whatsoever. But let's talk about Dragon's Plague. Dragon's Plague, oh boy, I saw a lot of people get very, very critical and negative when it comes to Dragon's Plague. This is what I want to say. It is a very, very harsh mechanic. It's very different and unique, but it is a very harsh mechanic. I agree to an extent that the consequences are probably too severe for the signs and what they tell you about Dragon's Plague, right? Things are very, very, they're not explained all that well with Dragon's Plague. Yes, the pawns say to you, when you're traveling beyond the rift, you can get this thing and potentially you don't, obey your master and whatever. But they don't really tell you how bad the consequence is. When you sleep in an inn and one of your pawns have a Dragon's Plague and it gets to that stage, they kill everyone in the town, and there's not even a way. Like, I thought it could be cool. Hey, yeah, have Dragon's Plague. It's a fun mechanic, but let us fight the pawn that turns into that bloody dragon. All there is a cutscene, right? There's no way to even fight the pawn to try and calm them down. That I think would have been way cooler. It would have been way cooler to have like a mini boss battle in that regard, because that's just going to add to enemy variety. It's another cool feature in the game. But instead, you just completely nuke the town that you're in. Now, yes, there are signs, but I agree the signs should be a little bit more obvious. I wouldn't know what all the signs were when it comes to Dragon's Plague unless I saw a Reddit thread about it, right? I'm not looking at the color of my pawn's eyes in the game, especially if you give them red eyes, or if their eyes that keep closing, or if they have a mask on. It's very difficult to see that stuff. And also when it comes to dealing with Dragon's Plague, how the hell do you figure out that you have to throw them in the brine to get rid of the Dragon's Plague? I don't think the game actually tells you that. And yes, overall, the game is not hand-holding you, but because of the severity of the consequence of the Dragon's Plague, I agree it should have been spelt out a little bit more. So if you are one of those unfortunate few to encounter the consequences of the Dragon's Plague, I feel you, I understand, that would suck in the moment. But now that I'm covering both sides of the argument, I'll push back a little bit. Apparently, it's not permanent. Apparently, people are saying if you wait a little bit in the game, a lot of those townspeople will just respawn. Not everyone, though, but a lot of them will. I haven't tested that out when it comes to my game. And at least for the NPCs that don't respawn, and especially if they're important, you do have wake stones to wake them up, and hopefully your quests aren't broken in that regard. I had this quest where one of the characters died, and I used a wake stone, and then he went back to his wife, and then I talked to him, and I completed the quest as normal, and got all the rewards, even though he died. And I suspect that would be the case in a lot of the situations where NPCs are dying in the Dragon's Plague. Though another one of the things against that is that there aren't that many wake stones in the game. So This one is absolutely a mixed bag. The thing that I'll say is that I think you should be able to fight your main pawn when it turns into a dragon. Absolutely. That would be so cool, and I'm surprised that they didn't do that. Let me know what you think about that idea in the comments below. So now let's talk about the main story in the game. I've seen a lot of people be very underwhelmed with the main story of Dragon's Dogma 2, and full transparency, I have not completed it, right? I have not completed the main story, so I can't comment on it. I can't say whether it was good, whether the build-up was bad, whether the ending was satisfying, and all that good stuff. I can't comment on it, so all I can do is defer to the people that have played it and that have left their legitimate grievances, because I don't think people are just being, overreactionary when it comes to this. I can understand people saying that the story feels rushed. I can understand people saying that there's no real tension or build-up and that the dialogue in many areas is lacking. I agree about the dialogue, mind you. I think at times it's very basic, right? But this is what I'll say in terms of the length of the game overall, and this is not just the main story, but I've seen a lot of criticism of people saying, I just rushed through the main quest, and overall this game is pretty lacking. So whether or not the main quest is good or not, I don't agree with people on how they've been playing the game. This game is not designed to be rushed through, right? People that have just beelined right to the end are absolutely going to get disappointed, because this game was meant to be taken slowly. You are meant to stop and smell the roses. When I played, right, my first 30 hours, I didn't even reach Backbatal. I was taking my time exploring all these random caves and walking around and doing side quests and stuff like that. I was trying to take my time, and I did not blow through the main story, and I fundamentally believe that's affect a lot of people's enjoyment of Dragon's Dogma 2. So you are going to miss so many side quests, you're going to miss so many items that you can get, you're going to miss so many dungeons and caves, and stuff that you can revisit again, like towns that you can go back and revisit. There are so many things that you will miss if you just don't stop to smell the roses, right? So in my opinion, it's the journey what matters, not the destination. I understand if people don't like the main story, but when it comes to the context and the overall package of the game, please take your time. Otherwise, you probably won't enjoy it as much as you should. The game is intended and designed to be taken slowly. But now let's talk about class balance. I've seen a bit of discussion about how people believe the vocations in this game aren't that balanced. So for instance, I've seen a lot of criticism when it comes to sorcerers and mages. I've seen a lot of criticism when it comes to thieves and mystic spearhands, because people believe sorcerers and mages are really, really bad, whereas thief and mystic spearhand and other vocations are OP and very, very good. I can understand that for sure. I can understand that criticism. I haven't experienced all the vocations in the game, but this stuff can be tweaked, right? I don't think this is one of those design choices that can't be rolled back and can't be optimized in some sort of way. Absolutely, Capcom has that data. Like when you're working in a developer, you'd be surprised how much data they have. They'll be absolutely able to tell how many people are using a sorcerer, how many people are using a mage, how many people are using thief, and they're going to see which vocations are used way more than others, and then absolutely they'll focus on improving the ones that aren't used that much, right? Especially when it comes to sorcerers and mages. So if that is truly the case, if people really don't like these vocations because they're very weak in the game in comparison to all the other vocations, I'm very confident that Capcom will fix it. And if they don't, I will sit here and eat my words, but you'd be surprised with the data they have and what they can do, right? So that's what I'll say about that. Next up, we have quality of life features and how overall they are lacking in the game. This is one of the criticisms that I absolutely do agree with. For instance, starting a new game. This is Video Games 101. I've talked about this. We should all be able to start a new game in Dragon's Dogma 2 without needing to jump through hoops, especially on PC, to stop cloud files sync and deleting the save file, and hopefully it works and you can start a new game. That just should not be necessary. We should be able to start a new game. And I also do believe that we should have at least one other save file. Don't get me wrong, I understand the argument that because of the pawn system and because all this data is being set to the Capcom servers, if everyone could have another main character and another main pawn, that would put a heavy strain on Capcom servers, especially at launch when there are over hundreds of thousands of people playing the game. But eventually, as those audiences die down, as the game becomes much more stable, and they're able to handle a little bit more bandwidth when it comes to people's save files and pawns, eventually we need to get multiple save files. Absolutely we do, even if it's just one. So starting a new game is the priority. Multiple save files, I think, is the next step, even if it's just one more. When it comes to no lock-on, I've seen a lot of people criticize the combat in this game because you can't lock onto enemies. This is one I'll disagree with. It's an intentional design choice and it makes you think. I love Elden Ring. I love the ability of games that let you lock onto enemies. It helps you in many combat scenarios. Not all of them. No, sometimes lock-on can actually be to your detriment, right? But with Dragon's Dogma 2, I think not being able to lock on is the way the game is designed, is the way that combat is meant to feel. You know, it's meant to feel frenetic and crazy and enemies being able to attack you from nowhere. I think that is actually fine. It's not meant to be hand-holding you in that regard. So I understand if people want it because it's a convenience feature you've experienced and become used to in other games. But for Dragon's Dogma 2, I think it's fine, and I actually like the fact there is no lock-on. It makes you think a little bit more. Next up, we have dialogue lip syncing. I agree, the facial animations, the lip syncing in this game is not good. It absolutely needs to be improved, especially in some of those situations. I'm like, you are not saying the thing that you're saying. I completely agree with that. Pawns also repeat the same lines over and over and over. I get it. There is a bloody ladder there. I don't care. I get it. All of the vocations are different in the party. I don't need to hear that a million times. I love my pawns and I love how quirky they get. I added this pawn that was a smartass to me. Doesn't have the Dragon's Plague, but he was generally a smartass and quite, you know, uptight. He was funny, right? But then after the 100th time of saying the same thing over and over, that gets annoying. So they need to fix that somehow. Even if they don't talk as much or add more lines, something to fix that for sure. And finally, sneak missions and stealth missions. There isn't a stealth mechanic in the game. Why do we have sneak missions when it doesn't really work? I remember doing one sneak mission, and I won't give spoilers, where absolutely the guards should have seen me. I was walking like right in their vision, and there is no way they wouldn't have seen me if this was real life. That absolutely needs to be improved. But talking about improvements, again, Capcom, to their credit, have already said there will be updates, there will be patches and fixes coming very soon to the game. We already know about some of these, so they are going to be adding the option to start a new game. That's really good. Should have been in the game at launch, but it's good that it's coming. They're going to be increasing the number of Art of Metamorphosis tomes and the vendors in the game from 2 to 99, so that's really good if you want to keep changing the appearance of your character or your pawn. Again, if you're on console, you get to turn motion blur off soon, you get to turn ray tracing off soon as well. They're also going to be adding that frame rate cap, as I said, so hopefully it means a more smoother experience for you. And then eventually, they need to improve the frame rate. They've said they're going to do this. It might not necessarily be in the next update, but hopefully it is. So updates are coming. And also as well, Capcom sent out this survey to ask you and us as players what you want to see when it comes to DLC for this game. When I first saw this survey, I was a little worried because I was like, you should already be planning DLC right now. You should already have a good idea about what DLC you're planning for the game and releasing, because oftentimes developers already know what they're doing in that regard even before a game is launched. So part of me thought, is the reason you're asking about this because you genuinely have no idea? But then I thought about it and thought that's probably not a fair assessment. I think they probably do already have DLC planned, but they're just asking us for what other stuff that we want, right, when it comes to DLC and content. So that's it. That's this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, I'm trying to be as fair as possible. I covered both sides of the argument as much as I could. And until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourselves, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.